Tying up another nice smallmouth pattern today. This is Harry Murray's Madtom. It's basically just all rabbit. There's a rabbit zonker tail and a number of dubbing loops with rabbit in it. Put on the whole hook here and then trimmed to get this kind of sculpin looking shape. Madtom is basically it's a specific species of catfish. It's a small catfish. If you look out on the internet, you can see, but that's what you're trying to mimic here is just that catfish look. Now this is going to ride hook point up, so keep in mind all of this will kind of come out a little bit like this and pulsate as though those are pectoral fins and things. Now this does take a little bit while with the dubbing loops. If you're familiar with dubbing loops, I'm going to release two versions of this. There's going to be a short version where I just hit the key points and get through the fly a little bit quicker, but then I'm going to have the longer version that's going to show all the dubbing loops and the trimming and everything else, which is a little bit longer. That's the Murray's Madtom. I'll get started tying. I'm going to start the Murray's Madtom with my hooking device. This is a Mustad 9672, or more modern number is a R74. It's a 3x long streamer hook. I'm going to go ahead and debarb the hook. I'm going to attach my thread. For thread, I'm just using a Danville 70 denier in black. I've already got some wax on the thread. Wax is definitely beneficial on this fly, as we will be doing a number of dubbing loops with rabbit fur. I'm going to keep my thread up by the eye of the hook. I'm going to attach, the original recipe calls for just an unpainted lead dumbbell eye. I'm using a painted black lead dumbbell eye. You could use either one. I'm going to attach that. I want the cross piece of that to be about 1.5 eye lengths behind the eye of the hook, a little bit closer than that. Once that's on there, you can usually scooch it around a little bit before you kind of lock it down. But I need to have a little bit of space in front for a few wraps of dubbing up there that we're going to trim. So I'm going to do my crisscross wraps. I'm going to do my collecting wraps. This is under the dumbbell eyes and over the hook shank. And then I'm going to bring my thread all the way back down. Before I do that, I got to put some lead wraps on here. So I'm going to put in about a dozen lead wraps. I'm using a 0.020 lead wire for this. You can use a lead free if you want to. It's up to you. Actually, I will quickly wrap my thread down to the end of the shank to get it out of the way. Now, see, I could, and it might have worked out better if I just put the lead wraps on here first. Put those right in the middle. Get about a dozen or so in there. Collect those together. You can have all those just sitting on the hook shank while you tie the dumbbell eyes in, and then you can squeeze those forward to the dumbbell eyes like that. But that works if it's over the thread too. Then I'm going to bring my thread all the way up in front of those lead wraps and back down. Oh, broke my thread. I had mentioned in some other videos, I think this is an older spool of thread, and the nylon threads are pretty strong, but I've noticed on this one, I have been breaking it a lot more often, as well as I have spots that will come out on the spool that are kind of frayed, a little fuzzy. And I think it's just because it's an older spool of thread. These do have a shelf life, by the way. I'm throwing that in here just because if you've been following my videos, you've noticed in a number of them recently I seem to be breaking my thread. It isn't so much that I'm pulling on it too tight. A lot of times, as I'm wrapping right now, I am putting a half clockwise turn in the thread every time I go around the hook shank. That's twisting that thread up tighter and tighter. Generally, it's not an issue. I point that out just because some people may not be aware of that. See, if I stop right here, I bring my bobbin up and just right below the hook shank and let it rest. See what it starts doing? It is naturally all those twists in that thread, it starts to untwist itself. Well, if you're putting a lot of thread wraps up and down that hook shank, and the 70 denier is not the strongest thread in the world, strong enough for the fly, but anyway, you can get to the point where you get so many twists in there that it snaps the thread. So keep that in mind. Also keep in mind if you are experiencing a lot of breakage in your thread, that it may not necessarily be you and how tight you are with the thread. It may be an older spool, but we'll make it work. So with my thread now down at the end of the shank, I'm going to tie in the tail. Madtom is a simple, basic fly. It is a rabbit zonker tail. The body is about 3 dubbing loops worth of rabbit hair put in, and then it's trimmed. So there's really not much to this fly, but it is a very, very effective pattern. I'm going to take the whole zonker here, and remember, because of the dumbbell eyes here, this is going to ride this way in the water. So we want to tie this in with the hide, in this case facing down this way, so that the hair will be facing up. You'll set that up on the hook shank, not quite up to those lead wraps. You could, if you wanted to, just set it right on up next to the lead wraps and use the hide to kind of fill in that space. It's not imperative that you have that nice and smooth, because the dubbing loops are going to be kind of messy and they'll take care of themselves. Now I'm going to trim the hide here. I don't want to just reach in with my scissors and cut straight across, because I'll actually be cutting all of this hair too. I want the hair to stick out and flow past where I cut the hide. You cut the hide here about the same length as the shank. That's going to give you about the right length of tail. Just use one edge of your scissors and kind of saw that back and forth. And it'll cut through there, or you can use a straight razor too. But notice that when I cut that hide, the hide's cut, but all this hair is not cut. So it gives me a nice taper back there. Now here, I'm just going to go ahead and put in a dubbing loop. You can do this in multiple different ways. There's lots of videos on doing dubbing loops using rabbit. Some people will take the actual zonker strip like this, and they'll take a bulldog clip, or there are specific tying tools made for this. They'll clip all of this and cut it off the hide, put it in their loop. I like to just, in this case, go ahead and cut some clumps off of a piece of rabbit skin. So I'm going to make my dubbing loop, and if you've never done this before, all it is just a loop of thread up here that we're going to put our rabbit in, twist it up to make a dubbing brush. But you have to lock this dubbing loop in, because if you can see on camera here, I'll try and turn this the other way. I have my thread coming around on this side of the hook shank, and then I have it coming around on this side of the hook shank, which means I have a gap right here. Now, in the big scheme of things, that's really not that big of a problem in terms of making your dubbing loop, but it is easier if we can bring these two together to reduce that gap. The easiest way to do that is when you bring your thread over here, then you take your bobbin and thread over the top of that loop like this. Then you come around the bottom of it and back over the top of your hook shank. And as you can see, I now have it pinched closed. I have it pinched closed right at the hook there. trying to walk and chew gum at the same time here. And I lost a hold of my dubbing loop. Now, what I'm going to do is put my dubbing loop tool in here to grab both sides, and then I will untwist that. Again, not super imperative, but it is nicer if it's untwisted and you have that coming together right down at the hook shank, because then we can get our hair close into the hook shank. So I leave the loop open. I'm going to bring my thread forward, get it out of the way. I'm going to cut a chunk of hair off here, probably 2 for each loop, depending on how far they get me. You'll see what I mean in just a second. I'm just going to cut a chunk of hair off from the hide here. As you can see, I've got the finer tips here, and I've got where I cut it off from the hide here. I am going to take my thread and put some wax on it. There is dubbing wax you can use for this. I find the tying wax that I use is also good enough. What it does is it keeps, when you have that loop open, it keeps the hair from sliding down out of it. I'm going to open my loop up, and I'm going to then put this in it and close that loop again. Now, this is going to be messy. That's all I can say. It's not going to be perfect. You want to try and get that hair off to one side and distributed inside that dubbing loop. I'm going to get another segment. This is where, especially if you're not familiar or comfortable with doing dubbing loops, then you want to just put in 1 or 2 clumps at a time till you get comfortable with what you're doing in the concept. So I let the tool open up that loop again, and I take another clump, I close it into that loop, I bring it up here, then I'm going to spread it out just a little bit. If you have it in too much of a clump in one spot, it won't twist up for you. You'll see what I mean in just a second. Now, with that spread out, I'm going to go ahead and start twisting this. I was going to twist this clockwise. I'll try and hold it up so you can see it a little bit more. But what I'm doing is I'm just twisting that thread up, and I'm twisting all that hair in there. And what it is doing is just making what's called a dubbing brush of the rabbit hair. Now, when you stroke this, some of it's going to come out. That's fine. As you work on this more and more, you can get a little bit better. You can get a little bit more precise if you want. Like I said, there's tools out there, but I'm not that concerned, because what we're just trying to do right now is fill the hook shank up with rabbit dubbing. Let's say rabbit hair. Then we're going to be trimming all of this. We'll trim this and shape this into what will end up looking like a Madtom, like a small catfish or a sculpin. You can see I'm stroking those hairs back on each time I'm wrapping that around. I don't want to get any trapped underneath. If you do, it's no big deal, but you want to try and minimize that. I can usually get about up to the lead wraps, my first application, and then from there, then I'll do another dubbing loop, and that will get me behind the dumbbell eyes. So I'm going to unwrap this and lock this in. Put 2 or 3 wraps in there to lock that in. and then I can cut away that first loop. We're just going to build up the whole fly all the way up to probably a third application that's going to go right in front of the dumbbell eyes. You may get some of that hair that comes out, that's fine, but a lot of this is going to be trimmed away. So I'm just going to go ahead and get my next dubbing loops done and apply this in, and then you'll be able to see what the fly looks like. So you'll notice on this last dubbing loop wasn't quite long enough. I want some more dubbing right up in there. So I'm just going to make another quick short dubbing loop. I want to fill that space in right here with some dubbing. The other thing is, you might have noticed that when I did twist that up, I made certain that I had some longer hair in this area. And I'll show you in just a minute, because what we're wanting to do is to trim this so that it looks more like those are pectoral fins. Think of a sculpin or even a catfish, which is essentially what we're shooting for here. It's just a small, Madtom's a small catfish. We just want to have a tapered body back here, trimmed around the head. We want to have kind of a collar of some rabbit hair that is going to be right behind the dumbbell eyes. So they will, in the water, look more like pectoral fins. So I'm just adding one more little dubbing loop in here just to add a few wraps of rabbit hair right behind, in front of the dumbbell eyes, so that that fills in that space right here. We just kind of want to keep that dense with rabbit hair. This is a messy fly, by the way. Do not think you're going to tie this and it's going to look really, really pristine and nice. And showcase. This is just a messy fly. That's fine. As you'll see, we're going to trim a whole lot of it. So I'm going to trim that dubbing loop out, sweep this back to put in a little head right behind the eyes here. I'm actually building up over the eyes there too much. Take your time with this. I'm going to put some wax on my thread. I'm going to put in a few wraps just behind the eye and then a whip finish. Don't worry if you grab a few hairs in there. Push all this back just a little with your thumbnail so it's not over the eye. We'll trim away our thread and take a look at the bushy, messy mess that we have. Slap some head cement in here. Let that soak down in there. Now I'm going to trim the hair away. You are going to make a mess of your tying disc and you're going to get some hair all over the place. Keep in mind, we want to have a tapered body on this, so it's going to be narrower back here, tapering up towards the collar, and then all around the head, it's just going to kind of be the same diameter as those dumbbell eyes. I'm simply stroking some of the hair out to make it a little bit easier to trim. You are going to probably have some areas like this that are a little sparser, some that are denser. Again, if you want to take the time to really, work on the dubbing loop tool and making dubbing loops, you can get that a little bit more consistency. I don't think it really is that big of a deal for this particular fly. But I'm going to go ahead and get started trimming this, and it'll take me a few minutes to get that done, and then I'll talk about the shape, the overall shape of it. Trimming this, you really want to just It's just kind of the same with deer hair. If you're doing a deer hair bug, you're going to trim it all long first, just to start getting the overall shape of it, because you are kind of sculpting this. And this this rabbit hair can be kind of soft, so make certain you've got some good sharp scissors to do this with. You want to just trim all this kind of long. Here you can trim this a little bit closer. We're going to actually get pretty tapered down to that hook shank back here. But you can see it's starting to take a little bit of shape here. That's kind of what you're looking for. Keeping it a little long right here, we'll trim that a little bit shorter, moving up towards the collar here. You want to make certain you're leaving enough for that collar. Also real close to just behind those dumbbell eyes. I want that collar to come out definitely behind the dumbbell eyes there. Just shaping this as kind of a little torpedo head. You take a look out on the internet for some images of Madtoms, you'll see what I mean in terms of they look very similar to sculpins. They are a small catfish. They are a major food source for a lot of warm water species, especially smallmouth bass. You can tie these in different colors. You can tie these in different sizes if you want. You want them a little bit smaller. You're never really going to get these things perfect in terms of how smooth the body is or how full it is. You know, that collar's looking not too bad. I've got some sections that are a little bit longer. I like to leave the nice tapers even if it does look a little bit ragged. Pulling those hairs out to the side here, I am going to trim that just a little bit narrower. Trim the hairs back a little bit if you want, if you don't like them quite as long as they are. I just assume leave them. They look a little bit more natural. They're mostly going to all kind of fold backwards, and then they'll pulsate out when this fly is moving on the bottom. I'm going to thin that collar a little bit by trimming a little bit back farther behind the eyes here. Keep trimming on these things, almost like, when you're working with deer hair, and just keep going and going and going. But at some point, you just have to say enough is enough. The fly looks well enough. It doesn't have to be 100% perfectly smooth. And with a nice taper and everything, you're just looking for that profile. I'll try and comb a little bit of this out. And with the rabbit, if you've ever worked with the rabbit, and especially doing dubbing loops and trimming like this, it just gets everywhere. But that is the Murray's Madtom. Just a nice, it's a rugged fly. It will last a long time. You do it upright. It just takes a little while to do, as well as a little bit of artistic license in terms of you're doing some sculpting. That's kind of the fun of it. It does not have to be perfect. Even if you get one that just looks like a mess, it will still fish pretty well, and you can have some fun. So there's the Murray's Madtom. Thanks for watching today. Thank you for joining me at the Vice today. I hope you learned a new pattern, at least a tip or trick here and there. If you'd like to help Dress Irons, you can like, comment, share, subscribe, all those wonderful things for the video. You can also head out to dressedirons.com where you can buy flies, tools, stickers, and merch, or you can join a growing community over on Locals at the Dressed Irons Fly Tying Guild. You can also donate to Dressed Irons if you want through the link at the bottom of the description. I thank everybody for their ongoing support, as it really does help the creation of these videos. And what's important is to remember, only fly tying. If you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong.